Hello nerds! Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is Renaissance Nerd. This is a new series that I'm trying out. To start off, it's going to be just cooking stuff. We're going to do one video for Renaissance Nerd a week. So for the cooking parts, it's going to be based around one meal. So the first video will be a side dish. The second video will be a prep for the entree. The third video will be the entree. And then the fourth video will be how to use that dish as leftovers, so that you can maximize and not throw away food, and then you don't have to spend a bunch of money going out to eat because you can make some really delicious stuff at home. Eventually, I want to get this series into more aspects of everyday nerd life. Right now, we're just gonna nerd out on food, and who doesn't like to eat, right? Everybody has to eat, so you kind of gotta like it. This month, we're doing shepherd's pie. This is kind of my homage to Serenity because Shepherd Booth was one of my favorite characters, mostly because, much like the Joker, there's like a whole lot about him that nobody knows, and we apparently are never going to know. I really dig the character, and I wanted to do something to I want to do these videos so that they tie in with something nerdy, right? So Serenity is one of the bigger fandoms inside of the general nerddom, and I am a part of it. I'm not wearing one of my brown coats right now because A, I didn't want to have to dig them out of the closet, and B, we're gonna be cooking, and those things get really hot. So this month we're doing shepherd's pie in honor of Shepherd Booth. And now, this is Shepherd Booth's pie. And now it's time for the good stuff. This is how you put together your shepherd's pie. We're going to mash the potatoes, we're going to cook the meat, add the mirepoix. Actually, we're gonna do the mirepoix in pieces, but it'll make sense as we go through the video. Let's do this. I'm so hungry right now.
Alright, kicking things off, we want to set our heat to medium-high approximately. And then we can put our onions in. Once that pan is hot, put those onions in dry. You don't need any oil for this. And even if you're using a regular pan, not a non-stick pan, your best option for when you're building up a fond like this is to use wooden utensils, because the wood is not going to scratch the metal. I mean, ideally, you don't want to put any metal shavings at all in your food, right? So wood is going to be the biggest step in the right direction for that. And you want to make sure that you give these onions time to set. You want them to start to brown. You don't want them to be super soft, but you do want them to soften. And give them a stir every now and then, making sure that you leave them with the maximum amount of surface area exposed to the heating element as possible. Again, give them time to set up. You're building a fond. You're browning these. Fond, F-O-N-D. So that's what you call that brown stuff that starts to build up in the bottom of the pan when you're browning vegetables. Once they've softened a bit, then you go ahead and throw in your carrots and celery. So we've got, again, approximately a cup and a half of the onions. Looks like we are about a little over a cup on both carrots and celery as well. We didn't use all of that stuff that we had prepped, but it's good to have it prepped so we can use it for other projects in the future. And again, you want to give these time to heat up, soften, get a little bit of browning going. You want that fond to build, and the only way it's gonna build is if these vegetables are stationary. So stir sparingly, just making sure things don't burn, and make sure you have maximum exposure to that heating element. can't do this in real time, otherwise this would be a good 35-minute video. This portion at least would be about 35 minutes, just because it takes a while for root vegetables to start to brown. That's why anytime you see a recipe that says caramelized onions in 5 minutes, they're lying to you, because caramelized onions take a good 30 minutes minimum. Now we're adding our beef, our ground beef that we seasoned in the last video. So add that. Make sure you give it a good, you want it to be broken up. And we're also turning on the oven. We're not as worried though about cooking this beef all the way through, because there are still 2 more cooking steps left. So the biggest part about this step is to get that beef broken up. Also be wary, you don't want to make too much of a mess. You don't see it because it's in fast forward, but I definitely threw a little bit of the vegetables around the kitchen a little bit, so be aware, it might happen. And now we're adding our stock cube. These are Knorr stock. I don't usually care much about brands, but this is the best stuff. There is nothing else like it on the grocery shelves. There's very little like it actually available professionally to chefs in restaurants. So this stuff is brilliant. One of those little things can make gravy enough for a family of 5. This casserole effectively that we're building with the shepherd's pie, water that stock down a little bit. Casserole that we're building effectively with this shepherd's pie, we are kind of building enough for 2, so that gives you kind of a rule of thumb. That right there was about a cup of that water, so we want that the stock gelatin to dissolve into that water so that it evenly disperses. And we are also scraping up whatever fond has built up. That water is both helping us deglaze, and it's also letting that fond kind of live and marry with everything. That right there, I used a slurry, but you can use a roux. Slurry is just water and a starch, so in this case it's water and flour. Or a roux is fat and starch. So traditionally speaking, roux is butter and flour, and you want equal parts butter to flour. In a slurry, you just want it so that there's no clumps of whatever starch you're using. You don't need it to be exact. For our purposes here, I did about a half a cup of water to a half a cup of flour. Basic, pretty close to normal average sizing. You got to give that flour time to bloom, so you can't just stir it around, or again, it's not going to happen as fast. Now we're adding our peas. Peas go in last because they are the most delicate. These are also frozen peas, so you want to make sure you break up all of that ice and even them out so that it has time to simmer. And then reduce that heat to low.
While that simmers for a little bit to let that gravy thicken up, let that roux do its job, we're going to mash those potatoes real quick. Simple process, but let's do it.
That's a stick of butter. You've got about a half a cup, 3/4 of a cup of cream. There are 2 heaping tablespoons of sour cream, and then 1 pound of cream cheese or Neufchâtel cheese. Neufchâtel is effectively the same thing, just with a little bit less fat. And then I prefer to beat potatoes with the electronic beaters. It makes it a little bit easier. You can totally do this by hand. I have done this many times by hand. Mashing potatoes is one of the reasons why I don't agree with Chef Prudhomme's book, Never Trust a Skinny Chef. I say never trust a overly fat chef, because if they're not working up a sweat in their kitchen, then they're not doing something right. So that's our mashed potatoes right there. And then we are going to build our shepherd's pie. That gravy has had plenty of time to thicken, so it's a good consistency at this point. And now we're going to line about the bottom of the pan. That's a 1-inch deep pan, so we're going to go, or it's a 2-inch deep pan rather, so we're going to go up about 1 inch. Making sure it's as even as possible, because you don't want it to be thicker in areas, because then those areas will take a little bit longer to cook. And also keep in mind that your beef might not be 100% cooked through right now, so you probably don't want to eat a large chunk if there are any large chunks. I mean, you can taste the smaller chunks because those are likely to be cooked through, but it is possible that not all of it is cooked through at this point, because we are still going to go into the oven at this point. And then potatoes on top. You want to, again, make sure those are as evenly coated as possible. And we do have approximately enough to make 2 of these, like I said, but, you know, then we have to do the leftovers video next. So evening out those potatoes, don't they look delicious? And when you're boiling your potatoes, because they're standing up, because we're setting them up on top of casserole, you can overboil them a little bit and it'll be fine. Overboiling them just builds up the starch and makes them more starchy. And for this purpose, that's actually a good thing. Generally speaking, you want to avoid making them extra starchy because they're not as good. But because of all of the other stuff we added to these bad boys, they're going to be amazing no matter what we do. Now we've got that covered with potatoes. We're going to put more cheese on top, because you can never have too much cheese. This time we're going with cheddar. Generally, when I'm melting cheddar, I don't spread it too far around just because it melts, and I like to have thick pieces and I like to have brown pieces. That oven is preheated to 350 degrees, and it's going into that oven for approximately an hour, or until it is a deliciously brown color. And then we pull it out when it looks like this. Yeah, look at that beautiful cheese. And then you just dish it up with a spatula like you would any other casserole. And that is your Shepherd Booth's pie. I hope you enjoy it, because I sure did.
And that is the entree for Shepherd Booth's pie. Definitely come back next week. We're going to deal with the leftovers. Don't forget, you can find the full recipe over on the Patreon site, patreon.com/generallynerdy, or you can see the basic instructions down in the video description, or over on the website for free, also down in the video description. You can find basic instructions there as well. The website is generallynerdy.net. Also, up on the website, you can find the links to the store, you can find the social media links, everything that is involved as such is all up there on the website, so go check it out, generallynerdy.net. But before you go looking for all of the things, definitely click the subscribe button if you're brand new here to Generally Nerdy, or if you like this episode, make sure you click that like button. For other videos that might interest you, definitely check out one of these boxes right here to the left of my face. But before you go, always remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and now we're gonna make some delicious food.